Srimad Bhagavatam 9:20-13. First let me say, Vanchakalpatrubhyascha kripasindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. So reading in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 20, we're up to text 13. Shri Shakuntala Uvacha Vishwamritratmajayvaham Chaktata Menakayavane Vedaita Bhagavan Kambo Virakim Karavamahite Virahim Karavamate. Shakuntala said, I am the daughter of Vishwamitra. My mother, Menaka, left me in the forest. O hero, the most powerful saint, Kanva Muni, knows all about this. Now, let me know, how may I serve you? There's a small purport here. Shakuntala informed Maharaj Dushmanta that although she never saw or knew her father or mother, Kanva Muni knew everything about her. And she had heard from him that she was the daughter of Vishwamitra and that her mother was Menaka, who had left her in the forest. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschachade Suntarani Gyanam Timarandasya Karanjana Shalakaya Chaksura Meditam Jainam Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Chakalpatrubhischa Kripasindhubhye Bacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha. So here we have the continuing saga. This is Shakuntala speaking, and she's replying to the question that's asked her previously. She has been hearing about Maharaj Dushmanta. Dushmanta has found her, and he said to her previously, O most beautiful one, it appears to my mind that you must be the daughter of a Kshatriya. Because I belong to the Puru dynasty, my mind never endeavors to enjoy anything irreligiously. So this way, Prabhupada says in the purport that he indirectly expressed his desire to marry Shakuntala, for she appeared to his mind to be the daughter of some Kshatriya king. So that's what's happening there. And she is she announces herself as Vishwamitra Atmaja. Atmaja, born of the person, but has a long A, so it's a daughter, Atmaja, the daughter of Vishwamitra, the very famous person. And read about him a lot in the Mahabharata. So anyway, she's speaking like that. We find let me see. her her mother, I think, is Minika, right? Yeah. So there's a backstory here. Minika was born during the churning of the ocean. This is another great story in the Bhagavatam, the churning of the milk ocean by the Devas and the Asuras. And many things came out, and one of them was this Apsara, Minika. Apsara, yeah. Prabhupada called them, here in a little place I'm reading from the Wikipedia, they say here's a celestial nymph, but Prabhupada called them heavenly society girls. By society girls, he meant very high-class prostitutes. The Apsaras, the celestial nymphs in the world. She was one of the most beautiful Apsaras in the world with quick intelligence and innate talent. However, Minika desired a family. Due to his penance and the power he achieved through it, Vishwamitra frightened the gods and even tried to create another heaven. Indra, frightened by Vishwamitra's powers, Indra is always being threatened, by the way, shaky throne there. Frightened by Vishwamitra's powers, sent Minika from heaven to earth to lure him and break his meditation. Minika successfully incited Vishwamitra's lust and passion. She succeeded in breaking the meditation of Vishwamitra. What stories these are, huh? However, she fell in genuine love with him, and a baby girl was born to them, who later grew up in sage Kanva's ashram and came to be called Shakuntala. And her name is the name of a famous play, Abhijna Shakuntala. What's the name who wrote it? I forgot it right now. It was my hand. Later, Shakuntala falls in love with Dushanta and gives birth to a child called Bharata. And Bharata ends up being, Bharat Varsha is the one here. It goes on here, the story. After she gives birth to the child, however, later, Vishwamitra merely cursed Minika to be separated from him forever, for he loved her as well and knew that if she had lost all devious intention, and that she had lost all devious intentions toward him long ago, after succumbing to Minika's flirtations, and after having a daughter with her, Vishwamitra then travels south to the Godavari to resume his austerities, setting down in a spot where Shiva stood as Kalanjara. So anyway, this is a story. Then Vishwamitra, he's also tested by another Apsara named Ramba. A lot of times the Devas, when they see a great sage who's getting power, because austerity gives you power, and the Devas become upset by the powers of these sages, so therefore they send these Apsaras to tempt them. So this is a theme that we see happening a lot. So So when Vishwamitra is tested by Ramba, who gets cursed by Vishwamitra, and then after cursing Ramba, Vishwamitra goes to the highest mountain of the Himalayas to perform even more severe tapasya for 1,000 years. He ceases to eat and reduces his breathing to a bare minimum. So this is yoga power, that you can live on air alone. And so anyway, I don't need to go on about this, but just to give you an idea, from the Bhagavatam, we get a narration of world history that we don't know about, because we're in Kali Yuga, and this is the worst of times, and all these previous things that have gone on before, we have no notion of them. We are in contact with people who go to different planets and have these powers, and we now regard them as myths or miracles, you know. And Prabhupada said once, miracle simply means you don't know how it's done. There's a way to do it. So so we in the West are really captivated by this idea of progress, and that's actually part of the whole idea of evolution, that you start from nothing, and somehow out of its own accord, something comes, some little squiggle of light. Suddenly there's, you know, on some little warm tidal pond, something comes alive, it's self-motivated and goes on, which nobody can figure out. And then gradually there's this thing called evolution. While I was in college and they talked about it, the fact is that there's the idea in modern science of entropy. Things run down. They go from being high energy or high information content to low information content. They wind down. This is how time works. But here, the story that is told about our world is the opposite is happening. You're starting with very simple, uncomplicated things, and then as time goes on, they get more and more complex. They have a higher information content, as mathematicians would say. And the only way they can explain this is that, yeah, the law of entropy must be everywhere, but we happen to be in the anti-entropic branch system. Entropy is things go downhill, you know, they decay. This is an anti-entropic branch system. So they and this is all because you want to say that things happen without it, you know, this evolution theory is there. And when I was a fairly new devotee, I had met this god brother named Sariputta, and you know, I was at the time I had finished all my work for a PhD, but then I became a devotee and sort of put everything on hold and kept signing up for dissertation research. And so I had written Prabhupada a letter if he had any suggestion for a doctoral dissertation for me. And he said, well, if you want, you can disprove evolution. And that I went into a shock. You know, how can you possibly disprove evolution? I had no idea. And then there was this traveling Sankirtan party from New Vrindavan. And there was one guy on it named Sariputta. Sariputta had a PhD in mathematics already. He was in New Vrindavan because of a PhD in mathematics. They made him a treasurer. And he was a lousy treasurer because mostly you have to say, where are your change? Where's your receipts? You know, his track. Anyway, he wasn't, so they didn't know what to do with him. So they just put him on traveling Sankirtan. So that's how he happened to show up in the temple in Philadelphia while it was a new president there. So I showed him this letter from Prabhupada about if you want, you can defeat Darwin. And I was in shock, you know, of course, if the Bhagavatam is right, Darwin is wrong, but how would you defeat him? And this is what he said to me. He said, actually, most mathematicians know that Darwin is wrong, but they don't say anything because it upsets the biologists so much. So that's what he said. I said, wow, you know, that's. And then we had very interesting to have discussions with him about this idea of, and later we had the Bhaktivedanta Institute, and I became part of that, and we had some interesting adventures, and that Prabhupada wanted all these PhDs to come together and really to establish the intellectual bona fides of Krishna consciousness. So anyway, that's how this idea of this prior history about which we know nothing, except we call them legends or myths. The word myth comes from a Greek word mythos, which just means plot, story. And so they're stories of the gods, and we don't see them. It says that when Majbharata could perform sacrifice, even ordinary people could see the gods. So they're there. And we can accept this Bhagavatam, for example, as coming down to us from a higher civilization. We are, you know, we have the myth of progress, and we think that by our science we have controlling material nature, and that our control of material nature is really backfired on us to an incredible degree. And we're saying we're doing something wrong. We've made a mistake. And so Prabhupada was asked, why have you come to the West, by a reporter? And he said, I've come to give you a brain. It was in an airport, and there was a bunch of reporters. In those days, they still had the little tablets and pencils, you know, and they're writing when Prabhupada said, and he says, I've come to give you a brain. And the pencil stopped, and they all look up at him. And he said, the human society, like the human body, has heads, arms, belly, and legs. So the head is the brain. And so he then explained the Kshatriyas are the arms, Vaishyas the belly, and Shudra the legs. You know? And he said, so in your society, now this was his diagnosis of the West, having been there and looked around at all the progress. In your society, he said, everyone is a Shudra, and there are a few Vaishyas. And I always remembered that. I mean, I don't think the reporters knew what to make of all of that. But this was everyone is a Shudra, and there are a few Vaishyas. It means that we haven't seen real kshatriyas even, what to speak of actual brahmanas. So this is Prabhupada's mission. I have come to give you a brain. And that brain has to be ignited, so to speak. We have some capacity. That capacity is unused by us because we don't know how to do it. And therefore, Prabhupada, formed his ashrams for the training. I've come to make that brain. And he's given us these 4 regular principles. The vows we take on initiation, to follow the 4 regular principles: no illicit sex, no meat eating, no gambling. So they're the regular principles, and chanting 16 rounds a day. And I asked Prabhupada once, is that enough for getting what we want, that we follow the 4 regular principles and chant 16 rounds a day? And he said, yes, that's enough. And because what happens, we also have to read in the Bhagavad Gita about the modes of nature. And the brains of society are actually the brahmanas. The brains. I've come to give you the brains. And the brahmanas are in the mode of goodness. And the effect of chanting Hare Krishna and following the 4 regular principles is that you should see the modes of passion and the modes of ignorance start to go away. And they're identified in what those modes look like: lust, greed, anger, modes of ignorance, modes of passion, great endeavor, suffering. The result of the mode of passion is suffering. Our standard of advancement is the standard of the mode of passion. More money, more prestige, more control over others. This is the mode of passion. And the Kshatriyas are, they have some passion, but they're supposedly directed by brahmanas. We need, and the brahmanas are really intellectuals who are socially unattached. They're detached. Their desires are under control. They're actually situated in the mode of goodness. There's no training for our standard of advancement is the standard of the mode of passion. And the result of the mode of passion is misery. When the misery comes, most people don't know how to deal with it, and they go to the mode of ignorance. They take intoxications and things like that, suicide, despair. We've done so much. The result of the mode of passion, you get everything you want, you're still not satisfied. And in the course of becoming advanced in the mode of passion, you've also made a lot of enemies and alienated people who would be your friends. That's what happens. So Prabhupada has come to give us the brain. So you cannot think of Krishna consciousness as merely having to do with religion. It has to do with knowledge. And so when we follow these 4 regular principles, we actually gain knowledge, because we can then become in touch with Supersoul. And then we get guided and directed by the Supersoul, because there are two of us in this body. There's the individual soul and the Supersoul. We're there together. And part of what happens as we become purified, we follow more and more the impetus coming from the Supersoul and get guided and directed. At first, we have a representative of the Supersoul who's the spiritual master, but ultimately also we have the Supersoul within the heart. So when Prabhupada said, "I've come to give you a brain," that's what's really here. And we know it. We should actually take advantage of what we have, because you may have noticed that human society needs a brain. It doesn't have it, and it's just messing up all the time. And I think that, by the way, there is some idea that there's some impact. Things are changing in our direction, and I attribute it to the fact that when you chant Hare Krishna, either mentally or vocally, that sound enters the ether. Sound is an ether, which people regard as empty space, but that's where your mind is too. It's in the ether. So when you chant Hare Krishna, the ether it becomes purified, and then because of that, all the elements start to become purified. The air becomes purified, the water becomes purified, and so on. And you notice that people are starting to worry about this. Oh, look what we've done to the earth. Look how bad this is. Look at the wreckage we've left behind us. Look at what's happening to the ocean waters. Look at what's happening to the climate. It keeps heating up. Heating up is the mode of passion. We're doing all this stuff. Global warming is increasing. So people actually need the effects of modern civilization are now coming home to roost. But I also noticed that, like, I read a couple of newspapers, the New York Times and the Washington Post, and in all of them, there's more and more interest in being vegetarian, for example. People are becoming just more and more understanding what the cost of animal food is doing to the world. What's speaking to the animals themselves, but the higher up on the food chain, the lower you on the food chain you eat, the more energy is available. If you eat vegetables, you get a lot more out of it than if you feed the vegetables to the hogs and slaughter them and then eat it. It's much more wasted that way. So people are starting to respond, and it's having an effect. And I think it's because not just because of the books that we send out and the preaching that we do. I think that has an effect on people too. They may not give us credit for it. They probably won't. But that will come about. But also just the ether, the empty space, what people think of as empty space, the ether. It's not nothing. That's becoming purified. And when that becomes purified, then the air will become purified. So let us keep up the big work. It's having an effect. I've lived long enough and seen our movement to understand that it is doing this. and the more people that can do it, the better off it will be. And we're not only helping ourselves, but we are helping others in this way. So this is how our movement is going to go on. So it's good also that the other thing is, when Prabhupada summarized our movement, he said utility is the principle, preaching is the essence, books are the basis, utility is the principle, and purity is the force. That was he said this in a letter. I thought it was a good summary, right? Books are the basis. Preaching is the essence, I think is where he started, and then said books are the basis. Utility is the principle, means you engage everything in Krishna's service. And purity is the force. That force has to be there. And so we should not think of our four regular principles just as moral principles. They are principles of cognition. They are principles of knowledge. And it's not just about our own purity and advancement that's important, but anyone becomes advanced, they also help others to become advanced in this direction. Right now, all our educational institutions are really based on the mode of passion. If you look what the administration of most educational institutions do, they're about fundraising, about making money. And so again, it's contaminated by this. There's no like socially unattached intelligentsia, which is what the Brahmanas should be. They should be socially unattached, and they can guide the way. So maybe I should stop now and see if there are questions or comments. I went a ways from this text a little bit, but that's what you have to do sometimes.
Thank you, Ravindra, Svarupa Prabhu. Wonderful presentation. I like to point how Krishna consciousness is not a mere faith or like a sentimental belief. It's a fact. It's a science. It's knowledge. It puts us in touch with the Supersoul, and then we get guided by that. And thank you for coming on to give us some brain substance this morning. Thank you very much. Okay, dear devotees, do we have any questions or reflections?
Hare Krishna, Ravindra, Svarupa Prabhu. I just wanted to ask, so you had mentioned that the Western standard of advancement is mode of passion. And when we have like a misery, like when something miserable happens, then we kind of automatically go down to the mode of ignorance. And then you gave some examples of how that would look like. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that, so that if we're practicing or we're trying to practice Krishna consciousness and we think that we're in the mode of goodness, and then something miserable comes about anyway, because, even if you're in the mode of goodness, that'll happen, I assume. What would that look like then? Like how would that be different?
I think if some difficulty comes about, that first of all, to me, when things are very difficult, I pick up a book of Srila Prabhupada and I read it. Prabhupada said once that association with him through his books is better than his personal association. So Prabhupada's been gone for some time, and not everybody has ever had the chance to have his personal association, and he didn't expect everybody. Where was it? I forgot. It was some place. Prabhupada was in one temple, and it was filled with devotees. And he finally said to them, don't you have some, don't you have some service to do instead of just hanging out with him? You don't you have some service? And so Prabhupada worked very hard using the medium of printing books. And we also, by the way, have his recordings that are available for everybody. You can associate through Prabhupada's books. And I always remember this German aphorism, Lichtenberg, who said a book is like a mirror. He said if an ape looks in, no apostle will look out, or no angel will look out. There are different ways people translate that. But so we have to also, that's another reason why for really understanding Prabhupada's books, we follow these principles, because the books are always new. If we make some advancement, you go back, you read some book, even just like the simple ones like Krishna book, you see things that you never saw before. And as far as I can see, it never stops happening. So we can associate with Srila Prabhupada, who he used this term, founder acharya. And he insisted on it. It's on his books. It was on all legal documents, this founder hyphen acharya. And I did a research project for the GBC to find out where this term came from and why Prabhupada was so insistent upon it. And I found out that it is a term that was used in the Gaudiya Math to describe the Ramanujacharya, Nimbarka, Vishwamitra, the four founder acharyas of the Vaishnava Sampradayas. There's four Sampradaya, we usually call them Sampradaya acharyas, but the Gaudiya Math, they were called the founder acharyas. This was in a book published by the Gaudiya Math under Bhaktisiddhanta's supervision, the four founder acharyas. So when Prabhupada, therefore, uses that title, founder acharya, without really explaining much what it is, that really means he's on the same footing as those four acharyas of the four sampradayas. And because he did this one thing that nobody else had done, although it was attempted under Bhaktisiddhanta, by the way, they did send some preachers to England. That was the natural place to go if you're in India, was England. And Prabhupada ended up in America. That's where the boat went. That's basically how he got here. And of course, he was so, as we used to say in the 60s, far out, that New York City at that time was the right place to be. I mean, you talk about the unseen hand of the Supreme, that Prabhupada showed up in New York City. And actually, to be a devotee originally, in the very beginning, you kind of had to be a double dropout. The first academic book written about ISKCON was called Hare Krishna and the Counterculture, because there was this counterculture of the 60s, the hippies and so on. And his two big places was New York City and San Francisco. That's where they were. And so that's where Prabhupada's following came from there. These I called them double dropouts. They were all originally hippies. And Prabhupada talked about this hippies in the beginning. And they came to live with them. Communal living was a big thing then. And Prabhupada cooked for everybody. He cleaned for everybody. He washed their clothes. and gradually, can we help you? And that's how they served. And so the first place was New York City, second place, San Francisco. And the mantra rock dances, and all these things. So anyway, that's how Krishna consciousness came. And we have to take it the next step further. And Krishna will show us the next step and what is to be done, so long as we ourselves are advancing in Krishna consciousness. Each one of us we have something to contribute to the all together. And Krishna will send what we need next. So long as we are, as Prabhupada used to say, pushing on this movement. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ravindra. Svarupa Prabhu. Bhima Prabhu, do you have a question? Or any other devotee in the audience has a question?
I have an ethereal question.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Good to hear from you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to see if I could get any more of a concrete understanding of ether.
Of what?
Ether, concrete.
Ether? Empty space.
Yeah, because we hear that it's not actually empty space. It's like
No.
a place where other elements are held, right?
Well, I don't know. All I know about ether, Prabhupada, actually it was Sariputta who told me that in quantum mechanics, to describe empty space, you need pages and pages of equations. So that means it's not nothing. It's subtle. And if you take the idea that subtle things are more powerful than gross, that's what it is. So empty space is not empty space. Empty means we can't see it. That's all. And of course, you can't even see air unless the wind is blowing. You can feel it, but it's not something for sight. So, and I think that the Hare Krishna mantra is sound vibration, and so somehow or other, like even if you say it in your mind, it's a sound vibration. It's not just the sound vibration by ear, but it's a sound vibration by ether. And so it does something. That's all I can tell you about that. But stay with the sound vibration.
Okay, do we have any questions, reflections?
No, I'm sorry, my mic was off. So just confirming that ether is space, but it's not empty space because it's always filled.
It's empty to us because we can't perceive it with our eyes or a telescope. But everybody knows that even scientists know that light travels through empty space. How does it do that? So it's not exactly empty. And Sariputta said, it's actually quite sophisticated. If it takes so many pages of quantum mechanics to describe it, then there's stuff there. What's gravitation? I mean, that's far out. You get two bodies, they're separated from each other. You can't see anything, but one pulls the other closer to it, I mean, how does that happen? How does the earth gravitation field? They say gravitation field. What is that gravitation? How does it grab a hold of it? I have no idea. We just know that it happens.
Okay.
Okay, right. Glad it's all clear to you.
No idea.
But if we put the Maha Mantra out there, it'll do something more than just for our own brains, even if we're in a room by ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when we put the Maha Mantra out there, since it's permeating the ether and everything else in existence is contained within the ether, then it will have to affect everything else too.
Yeah, eventually, yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Emily, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for this wonderful class. I wanted to ask a quick question. Something you said is that a book is like a mirror, and then you explained that a little bit. And I really, really like that. I like it so much, but it also went over my head a little bit. You also were explaining the glory of Srila Prabhupada's books, that as you read them, if you're advancing, that they open up. But for someone, or actually most people coming into Krishna consciousness and starting Prabhupada's books, it is that reflection of it's really difficult to read for most people. The language, or sometimes it may seem like harsh. So how can we kind of get our self in the game of reading Srila Prabhupada as a new devotee, in order to get that faith that it opens up as we progress?
I'm having a little hard time hearing what you said. The connection is not so clear. Shraddha, how would you probably got better?
Yes, so for newer devotees,
Yeah.
how can they access true, like how can True Prabhupada's books open up to them, as you were saying?
Yeah. It's simply a question of paying attention. You know, our attention tends to wander. And so Prabhupada has said, using hearing as an example, one has to hear with rapt attention. And he says you can't hear with rapt attention unless you're pure in mind. So reading is hearing, another form of hearing. Just to read a book is also, you should read with rapt attention. And the nice thing about a book is you can go over it again and again. And I've just noticed that some particular book of Prabhupada's, I read something 2 years ago. I read it again. And since I've been practicing for 2 years, I see things I didn't see before. So for me, this shows that there's things in Srila Prabhupada's books that also will be picked up by us or understood or grasped by us as we advance. And that's really why Prabhupada was so dedicated to having these books, that they could come out and they could reach so many people. And by those books, as Prabhupada said, association with me through my books is better than my personal association. That also becomes a little clearer because Prabhupada is actually present in this way. And you will start to feel that you are in his presence just by reading those books. So this is the books that, like, you become, as you advance, also more and more things become clear to us at the same time. I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you, Ravindra. Svarupa Prabhu. Do we have another question from the audience? Last one. Okay. Ravindra, Svarupa Prabhu, thank you very much. I have a quick follow-up question on the disproving the evolution theory.
Uh-huh.
How did all the species come about did they develop from a common ancestor? Consciousness is coming from Krishna. Let's leave it at that. But what about species like whales? How come they're mammals and they're underwater? Were they once on land? And how come humans, we have these toes? What are toes for? Didn't we climb the trees once or something like that? Because we would have had hoofs. Hoofs are better for walking. Maybe I'll get a pair of hoofs in my next life.
There's a theory why these things come about, you know, that the hoof is our fingernails.
It's further advanced phase of it.
But the other thing you do is you take a general plan and then you sort of you can say it happened by evolution, that it changed, or there's simply a template that you adapt it to different people in different circumstances, so that it can fit in whatever environment they happen to live in. You know? That way it's how do you say yeah, it uses, if you know, you get the most out of the plan. You just change it a little bit here, change a little bit there. You just work it out so much, you know.
Right.
You know, of all the different kind of species of life that we see, it's really amazing. But I don't think we've seen anything like what is really there yet. So there's a whole lot more to confuse us with.
Right.
But just take it that the one thing that at least human life is that you are, you know, it's meant for self-realization. That's what we should really be using it for. Then if you don't make it all the way, at least your next birth is human, if not a demigod or something.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing the point back home.
Okay. You're welcome.
Thank you, Ravindra Svarupa Prabhu. Thank you, everyone, for listening, for commenting and sharing their reflections, asking questions. Srimad Bhagavatam is questions and answers. Ravindra Svarupa Prabhu, thank you for giving us brain, like we said. You are surely a representative of the Guru, Supersoul of Krishna. Thank you for being who you are. And, we hope we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, I'm around.
You're around.
Hare Krishna. So thank you very much. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.